wide spectrum of being over it.
It's kind of hard to have a football season when half your team goes quarantine.
Now I know what you mean. Yep. I believe it.
Yeah. Hey, no worries. My son's team won on Saturday.
Did you get to go to Arizona during the snowstorm?
I wish.
Do you have a copy for everyone?
I didn't bring a copy for everyone. I did bring it with me though. I can run and
It's gonna be a while before I put that down.
we can run and make a copy for everyone.
Okay. Just a,
Platteville, Ted
no.
Cruz.
Huh?
Platteville, Ted Cruz.
Yeah. The Cruz brothers. Don't forget the other one. That's very good. Give Dave some credit too.
Wait for that?
Yep.
Okay. Kim and Dylan, while we have a few minutes, I'm gonna introduce you to the board, front and center. I'll have them introduce themselves to you, but the mayor is in the front, center.
Hello, good evening. Everybody turn their microphones on, please.
Okay, Larry, your turn.
Oh, I'm Larry Clark.
Now raise your hand so they can.
Oh, yeah. That'd be. Okay.
Jeremiah.
Jeremiah Overman.
Troy Plum.
Spencer Brandon. Mike Calper.
And
I'm David Brand. I don't think I'm on the screen, but
I knocked David off the corner of the screen.
I'm used to it.
So,
We're missing one trustee tonight, Nick.
yeah. Nick Ralston, trustee Ralston is out of town tonight, so he's not in attendance, but that man quorum. And we're waiting on Mayor and Town Clerk to make a few copies, and
We'll get
then
started.
the mayor will get started. So thank you both for joining us tonight.
Yes, thank you.
Our pleasure.
Pretty casual here today, Dylan, so you never know what the board may say.
Did you see the Adams lifted their mask mandate?
I saw that.
I was excited.
Yep.
That's where we play football, so
There you go.
it's rough when the refs are throwing flags at parents for not wearing masks. I was like,
All right, I'll call over the meeting of April 6th to 2021. Can I have a moment of silence for all those who serve inside and outside our borders, please? All right, will you please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can we have roll call, please, Mary?
Mayor Adrian Sandoval,
Here?
Mayor Pro Tem Larry Clark,
There.
Mike Calper,
Here.
Nick Ralston, Spencer Bradnan,
Here.
Troy Blum,
here.
Jeremiah Overman.
There.
All right, if everybody's good with the agenda, can I entertain a motion to approve the agenda, please?
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda approved. Audience participation, we don't have any tonight. Moving on to the approval of the consent agenda, which includes the minutes of the March 23rd, 2021 special meeting of the board and the agreement for professional services, engineering services, Northern Engineering. Entertain a motion.
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, consent agenda approved. Action items, ordinance 798, an ordinance of the Town of Platteville, Colorado, approving a loan from the Colorado Water Resource and Power Development Authority and authorizing the execution of a loan agreement and governmental agency bond to evidence such loan and prescribing other details in connection therewith. Mr. Rankin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, the board is well known, very well knows that we've been working on this project for over 2 years now, since we received our compliance letter, compliance schedule from the CDPHE. So this is a significant step in finalizing that process. This is a loan application for Colorado Water Resources Power Development Authority. The board knows that we obtained approval for this application up to $6.3 million that we can draw down on. And there's an ordinance also for the board and the mayor to sign to satisfy that requirement. Part of the process, this last meeting, a couple weeks ago, I informed the board that I contracted with Kim Crawford with Butler Snow. She's our bond counsel for this project. And also with us tonight is Dylan. He's on the screen right yet, but I'll have them introduce themselves here in a second. But Kim has been vital and her staff to guide us through this process. I've never been through it myself. I don't want to go through it again if I don't have to. Fortunately, the town has been without any long-term debt or debt-free since, 12 years. And this is going to change that for the long term. But it's a requirement. If you want to know all the details of that, the more details will be coming up in the coming weeks. So at this point, I'm going to turn over to Kim. I'm going to turn up the volume, Kim, for you and Dylan. And so the board can hear you. But if you wouldn't mind, Kim, you or Dylan, kind of explain, as you taught me or informed me, what this loan agreement involves and the subsequent orders for the board to consider.
Okay, Dylan, I will go ahead and explain a little bit about enterprise status, and then we'll have Dylan talk about the actual ordinance and go over just the loan agreement just very, very briefly. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, you can.
So as Troy said, my name is Kim Crawford. I'm with Butler Snow in Denver. I've been working on these types of financings for almost 20 years. So this is what Dylan and I do all day, every day. So there are a couple of different options for towns to incur debt under Colorado law. One of them is getting debt voted, which is what you typically have to do under Tabor. But if you have an enterprise or operate one of your water systems or wastewater systems as an enterprise, you can incur debt without an election so long as you don't spend or don't receive more than 10% of your revenue in state or local grants. So for enterprise status, we look back at the full prior fiscal year to see what you got last year in grants or other state or local grants. And you did receive a DOLA grant, but it was from federal sources. So Dylan and I have come to the conclusion that you can incur this loan without an election. So to start the process, you've all been through the filling out all the forms for DOLA and for the Water and Power Development Authority. So this approving of this ordinance is really your first step in actually just finalizing and getting the loan funded. So Dylan, do you want to talk about what the loan is and the parameters ordinance?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So what you have here in front of you is what we call a parameters ordinance, where you are approving the form of the loan agreement and the form of the bond that's issued pursuant to that loan agreement, as long as it meets outside limits or parameters that are set forth in this ordinance. And so if you are looking at section 4 of the ordinance, what we are doing is we're delegating the ability to the mayor and the town manager and the clerk the authority to make the final detailed determinations on certain things like the interest rate on the loan, the overall principal amount of the loan, and the repayment schedule of that loan as well. And you set the outside parameters or the limits, so in no event can that exceed 2.25%, which is what the Water Resources Authority has also approved. That the loan itself, the principal amount of loan, will not exceed that $6.3 million, which you have all decided and discussed and the authority has approved. And then it says the final maturity of the loan says that it won't be outstanding and the last maturity won't go beyond December 31 of 2055. So then the loan agreement itself contains more of the details and the payment schedule in it. And then once we finally make those final determinations with the mayor and with Troy, we will get a final loan agreement and then we'll be prepared to close. But the ordinance is authorizing it on a much broader scale, subject to these parameters. So the loan agreement still can change and be finalized, but you are approving that as to form tonight.
One more thing with your ordinance tonight. It is, it's not effective until 30 days after publication. So we can't actually close the loan until 30 days after this is published, this ordinance is published. One of the things I did want to point out in the loan agreement, and I think Troy's been paying attention to this, but you have a rate maintenance covenant. So you're pledging your wastewater revenue to repay this loan back, but you need to do a calculation at the end of every year to make sure that you have 110% coverage, which means that your net revenues, which is the revenue that you bring in for your wastewater, less your operation and maintenance, that amount has to be equal to 110% of what your debt service is. So you'll need to do that calculation every year, and if you're less than that, you're covenanting to increase your rates so you can make those payments.
Yeah, good point, Kim, because we spoke offline with the board knows that we contracted with Rob Tellis several years ago, and we've been speaking to him recently about making sure they update our financial analysis based upon scenarios that Dave and I are talking to Andrew Ream with Rob Tellis about, but we'll know a hard number toward the end of this month when we find out what the gross maximum price would be from our contractor. So, and then closing 30 days after ordinance publication is a good timing because we won't know what those numbers will be until about that time.
So as Dylan pointed out, these are maximum amounts that you're approving in the ordinance. So we can't, the town can't go above that when they actually issue the loan, unless we take further action, the board takes further action. So the Water and Power Development Authority has set the rate, all of their rates right now are at 2.25%. But that 6.3 million is what Troy got approved, but I know he is expecting that it's not going to be that amount. And so when that number is finalized, your actual loan will reflect what you really think you need. And then even after that, it's kind of a drawdown structure, whereas you submit invoices and the Water and Power Development Authority reimburses you. So if it ends up that you get the loan for $5.5 million, and then your invoices upon completion you only need $5, they will restructure your repayments. So you're not going to be paying for any more than you actually borrow from them.
Yep. Which is why we're very happy to get this type of loan instead of having to bond it out.
Right. There's a lot more flexibility with Water and Power Development Authority loans.
Much more flexibility. It's really actually used what we need. Instead of under a bond, we take 6.3 million and that's what we're stuck with whether we need it or not.
Right, and then you could, well, yeah, yes.
Yeah. Simplistically speaking,
Yeah. Generally.
Generally. Yeah.
And in any case, the interest rate is 2.25 regardless. Is that right? I mean, that's not subject to change during the course of borrowing the money?
The question, Kim, is the 2.25%, is that a fixed throughout the term of the loan no matter what the final loan amount will be, or if it changes?
It's fixed.
Okay.
And Troy, yeah, we can't hear the trustees, so yeah, thank you.
Yeah, because the microphone's by me, so I'm gonna have to relay
Thank you.
it again here, so.
Perfect.
Again, more information will come to the board as Dylan and Kim indicated. This is a broad approval. This is basically ratifying that we qualified for $6.3 million from the state. It's not my intent to borrow that much by any means, which will be a detailed conversation next month. I'll bring up in my report. We're going to propose a very detailed study session that Kim has agreed to attend. So once we have some final numbers and Rob Tellis and Andrew Ream updates their financial analysis on our behalf. What are, not our rates, but our annual rate increases could be based upon loan amount and obligations, so on and so forth. And my goal is, number one, reduce the total debt service, number one, and put as much cash in this project as we can, and we'll talk about enterprise fund status during that study session and how that could, may or may not be impacted. But also, for our community, I think at the end of the day, they may know, but they probably won't care at the end of the day what our loan amount will be, but they don't care about those big annual increases to their base rates and sewer usage if we impose those. So those are my two goals, is to keep both of those at a minimum at all costs if we can. And talking to David, and David agreed, we have a pretty conservative game plan, but I don't want to push the board, but I don't want to do that until we have a final number from Moltz and JVA. And that's due on, David, April 27th, we're supposed to get that number? Correct. So, does anyone else have any questions regarding this for Kim or Dylan at this time?
When you talked about the percentage of state or local funds, are those just regarding the enterprise fund, or is that the entire town? When you have to qualify for the loan situation?
The question on the state and local funds, Kim, was that for the entire town or just the enterprise fund? And that's just what we received from the enterprise fund, correct?
Correct.
So it's its own fund separate from water or the general fund. So what Kim looks at, and Kim, correct me if I'm wrong, you reviewed all of our financial statements from 2020 to verify what our sewer fund structure looks like.
Right. So under Tabor, Tabor thinks that you can be an enterprise if you're operating as a government-owned business. So the intent is for you to not be reimbursed or not get money from the general fund. So like if you had sales tax that you were typically feeding into your wastewater enterprise revenue so that it can cover, different expenses, that would be a state grant or a local grant. And so we would count that against your enterprise status, but you don't get any of that. You could typically get a bunch of different kinds of grants from the state or local governments for maybe streets or parks or other things that don't count toward that either. So we did look at that.
And Kim, just to clarify, I want to bring this up in case there's a question by the board. You mentioned state and federal funds and how they impact the enterprise status. State funds do impact, but federal funds do not impact, is that correct?
Correct.
And so the board knows that $800,000 grant we received from DOLA is federal funded monies. I verified that today with Chris and May at DOLA. So that won't impact your enterprise fund status if that's what we decide to do, but that will be applied to reduce that $6.3 million obligation, depending on final cost, obviously. So.
And I know that we have that $2 trillion stimulus package, and where there's money going to local governments for that.
Okay.
Can the board choose to put some of that money toward this?
Okay, and that's a good question, and David, I talked about
that.
Kim and Dylan, the question from Mr. Cowper is, this roughly $2 trillion stimulus package coming from President Biden. The town of Platteville is supposed to receive a specific allocation from that money. Can that money be used toward this project if the board wants to pursue that?
Honestly, I don't know exactly yet, and maybe Dylan has more information. That would be those would be federal funds, but I think those are specific, there are specific uses, and I haven't seen, it's gonna pass through the state government, but I don't know exactly what those monies are earmarked for. So when you receive them, you will have instructions, I would think, as to how those funds can be spent. Dylan, do you have any more color on that?
I don't right now, but I would point out and highlight that any funds that you would get through President Biden's plan now moving forward would not impact our analysis on your enterprise status, because we're looking at year ended in 2020. So if there are funds available that you would be able to use for the project, that would then in turn reduce those funds that you would actually go through the requisition process with the water authority and reduce the total amount of the loan that you would actually be taking. So we don't have the detail as to what would be applicable and what project would be qualified project. But for this purpose, I don't think we need to consider that or worry about that for the enterprise analysis.
I would be surprised, could not use it for water and sewer projects, but I just don't know 100% for sure yet.
And Kim and Dylan, we appreciate that, because that's something I've been looking for myself, and I just can't find any restrictions or guidelines yet. They're not out yet, just, and the last I heard, there's gonna be some kind of restrictions, we don't know what. And I've also heard that, according to the spreadsheet I received, when the stimulus, President Biden's stimulus package was being drafted, Platteville allocation was right at about $500,000, according to this, what the state was guesstimating. And I heard that half of that would be allocated up front when it came through, it passes basically the state, but the other half would not come through until 12 months after the first distribution. I don't know if that's fact or not, but those are kind of the things I'm hearing right now, but nothing confirmed.
Well, you know, it's the federal government, so there's gonna be requirements. So,
Yeah.
And then the state will put their own requirements on it too.
Yeah, and then my understanding is that each state has some more requirements too, so I'm not sure how all the details will work, but it's a possibility, we just don't know for sure, so.
It's just icing on the cake in this matter.
Exactly, so. Okay, good question. Anyone else, any questions? Okay, Kim, Dylan, I think, there's no more questions at this point, but we'll, wait to see what the board does next.
You never know. I just felt like that was appropriate.
You also know after the commercial break.
Right. All right, any other questions, comments, concerns? I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve ordinance 798, an ordinance of the Town of Platteville, Colorado, approving a loan from the Colorado Water Resources and Power Development Authority, and authorizing the execution of a loan agreement and a governmental agency bond to evidence such loan, prescribing other details in connection therewith as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Roll call.
I need a roll call.
Roll call, please, Mary, thank you.
Mike Calvin,
Aye.
Nick Ralston, Spencer Bradman,
Aye.
Troy Blum,
Aye.
Larry Clark,
Aye.
Jeremiah Overman.
Aye.
All right.
So I just want to back up a second now that this is approved. So it sounds like we can, their review is only for 2020, right? So going forward, 2021, this is where I think your study session may be going, so I don't want to get ahead of it, put the cart ahead of the horse, but there's something you could do with the enterprise fund where you could give more money towards that fund and we're not going to screw this up anymore because they've already taken their one look at it, right?
And you're right, that's gonna be a focal point of the conversation coming up in the study session that I'm gonna ask him to be part of, and she said she would be, is how can we reduce our long-term debt obligation? And by doing so, what impacts will it have on the enterprise fund status and for how long? And
How much do you care about that?
And Kim explained that to me, but I want to hold that for the detailed conversation when we know that final number, and then we'll have that hard conversation. So, Kim and Dylan, thank you very much for joining us. The board has approved unanimously with one trustee absent the ordinance. So, Mary Lee, our town clerk, will have the mayor sign that. We'll get that. Do we send that to you or to the Power Authority?
send it to us.
Okay.
Just scan it to us and
You'll take care of all the red tape for me then, Kim?
we will. We'll handle it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Nice.
Sure.
Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you both.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Right. All right, moving on. Resolution 2021-08, a resolution of the Town of Platteville Board of Trustees authorizing signatures for a checking account for the Platteville Public Library. Mr. Aiken.
Thank you, Mrs. Mayor. The reason for the change obviously is because Naomi is our director now, and so Diane, retired. In previous years, I believe, and I don't see this real, because this is for the library's, what I call a now account, it's their checking account, it's not part of our normal checks and balances here, they have their own separate, small spending account. Usually they'll meet, we'll sign that, well, she will, because I've never signed a check for the library. All the years when I've been here with Diane, but since Naomi's been as a director, but it's used as the library board gives Naomi that authority, they ask Diane to be her backup if need be, and I'd be happy to do that. In years past, it was Diane and Mary and Devin, I believe, or finance clerk, whatever it may be, but I can't remember.
Last person who was on there with Diane was Deanne.
Deanne, so that's how long it's been.
So this now account,
It's our petty cash.
it's from it comes from the same funds though.
Mostly it is, the money that we put in there is, once you take out like just our regular cash box, it's mostly stuff, for faxes, when we charge $1 per page for faxing.
So this is,
Yeah.
this isn't from the,
No, it only comes from whatever people pay us for various services, so,
internal revenues.
yeah.
And just so the board knows, this account is at the community banks here in Platteville. And we as the town of Platteville, we also have a small account here, so we can access the bank as well. But our primary account, all of them, all the other ones are at Bank Colorado, Fort Love, or wherever Bank Colorado is. Fort Love is a branch.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? Entertain a motion, please.
Move to approve resolution 2021-08, a resolution of the Town of Platteville Board of Trustees authorizing signatures for checking account of the Platteville Public Library as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Woo-hoo.
Welcome, Naomi, to your
Yes.
position.
You gonna come here every meeting?
I mean, if you need me to,
We just see Diane like once a year.
Budget, yeah. All right. Moving on to Lincoln Park Improvement Project. Mr. Lincoln?
I'll simply start by saying that the board during our budget process approved $150,000 for Lincoln Park improvement, primarily for our playground. And since that time, I've asked Spencer and the Parks Building and Trees Committee to kind of run with it and make those decisions and present to the board. Spencer spoke to me several times. I attended one of the meetings, and pretty impressed. You know, they obtained several bids from two major playground companies, and they're always Spencer.
Can you pull up that link? That video?
Oh, sure.
It's way awesome.
It is, it's worth them seeing
Yes.
if you.
It is really awesome.
Is it part of is the link part of the packet?
No,
It is
it's,
email.
it's in the email.
Oh.
I sent it to you, though, too.
I know, but how long did you get it? I get it like 10,000
I didn't
emails
see
a
it on
day.
I sent it the next day, in fact. I'm like, oh, I should include David on this.
I did.
I thought about it.
Well, you thought about it. I don't remember seeing it because as cool as it sounds, I think I
Yeah.
remembered it.
All right, so while Troy pulls up the link to the
you're
video.
talk for Wall Street.
Like you said, we solicited bids, so we essentially got 6 different proposals, from Playwell and from Church Recreation. Our hearts wanted to go with Church, I'll be honest, but Playwell's package just kind of looked better, so. And maybe it's the presentation that they deliver, you know, I'll be honest with you guys, see it, it's pretty freaking cool. So they offered 3 options, and I'll pass these around. The one on top is the one that the committee is recommending. So, one of the agreements that Troy had made with the committee is that this $150,000 will cover the cost of the playground and the install, but it doesn't, the $150,000 does not include the removal of the current playground. So it's either going to be done by community help or Troy is going to call in some favors, essentially.
I voluntold Public Works, David and Todd, the 40s, where they can destroy the old playground and dig it out. I wasn't gonna pay $8,000 to do that.
Sure. We appreciate the having the extra leeway in our budget towards the
Maybe a
playground
second one.
equipment. So, apologize,
Some of the
Troy.
stuff with the old
No, you're
playground
fine.
to the dog
I can
park.
tell you, it's in there good.
Sure.
You
I don't
hope
see
to
why
put it
not.
in
We're
originally.
Getting it out to families that wanna put some playground equipment in their backyard, you know, I don't know what that looks like. But yeah, I think you'd have to ask the public works director what he plans to do with the old equipment.
I didn't know if there was any stuff that, with the old playground that could be used in the dog park, for the dogs to.
You know, honestly, have not even,
Thought about it.
I was voluntold by the town manager that we'd be helping remove it when the time came. And so as far as if we are going to do that, we'll need to know that ahead of time so that we don't end up damaging what, I mean, yeah, because some of the tubes of the old slides or something like that, potentially, you know, if you could find a way to lay them on the ground or you know, put them in there a certain way, the dogs probably aren't going to be quite as concerned with the sun damage that's on those and that.
Yeah, a week ago, I
You
sent.
sent from a personal email or a work email?
I sent it from Platteville Gov email.
I'll reply to it and then I'll highlight it for you.
This is 329. This is what you sent me after the fact.
Did you like the first, because it's so tall, has that extra height to it?
Yes, the height.
That's-
So I brought my girls to the meeting, and then with the committee was opining as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We both kind of came to the same conclusion that we like that one the best for different reasons. So I wish we had more kids involved, but it's such is the nature of the beast.
Okay.
Should've just touched this in between.
Oh, sorry.
So David,
Now I'll choose option 1 when it comes out.
And the rock climbing wall, we really like that
That's
option.
really cool, yeah.
all
I
right.
watched this thing 12
Okay.
times.
It's so cool.
That's our neighborhood.
Right. I like the idea that they had with the,
Yes, enter,
Want me to enter?
Yep.
Okay, here we go.
and then choose option 1.
you have to type in your name first.
Oh, I canceled it. It didn't make me do
Oh,
it.
cancel.
I'm not convenient.
There you go.
And then choose video.
Yeah, video.
Here we go.
So they did video or Google Earth view of our park.
Yes.
And they added flowers around the trees. They gave us ideas for improvements as well.
Painted all the
I noticed
houses,
that
you
as
got
well.
new vehicles, all washed.
Houses all look a little bit different.
Hummer over there?
Yeah.
So this really blew us away, I'll be
Yeah,
honest.
that's really awesome.
So there's cornhole boards over there on the side for adults to use. There's
Are
some-
they concrete?
I don't know the,
In the packet, it describes
it
them.
does describe
Okay.
it,
Like
yes.
the chair spinners.
And the flowers are musical.
Yeah, there's some music, and there's some musical stuff here on the northwest side as well, which was a request by one of our chair of the committee. She's worked on some other playgrounds, and it's a popular addition, so.
That is option 1, right, Spencer?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Can you run my option 3 real fast? I'm just curious. That's, I'm looking at it, that's one.
It's really awesome too.
Please.
Yeah, they're all
Option
really,
which one?
3.
3.
3.
I mean, they're all cool.
They're all very cool.
Okay, here's 3.
More of a patriotic thing.
I think the other one's red and blue as well.
Yes.
I like that slide, how it's, or like the one going up and climb up it, different things.
Yeah, there's like a whole spider
That's
web
cool.
in there. That's really awesome too.
Option 2 is really cool too. I think it was actually between option 2 and option 1 for the committee. And you might as well show them option 2 as
I'll
well.
go to 2 next.
They all had cornhole and they all had flowers.
Yeah, that's
What's that round thing, that spinning thing there?
Yeah, it's like a spinner thing.
We'll just call it the Upchuck Mobile.
Okay.
So the committee opted to go with the rock climbing wall over top of like the metal climbing structure. Ultimately, it's, you know, those rock climbing walls are expensive, admittedly, so that's where we ended up.
That's cool.
And the board is always welcome to decide on any of these options or any of the other ones that we received as well, because you're not gonna be nearly as blown away by the other presentation, I'll be honest. this is the one we almost chose for sure.
They're all very neat. I can see why you guys have a hard time.
I like the presentation.
Steve, you got something like this for the backhoe too, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna follow this up, poor guy.
More like pencil stick drum, like
Live and in person.
How old is the existing playground equipment? Does anybody know?
I'll defer to Mr. Cal.
He installed it.
2002 is approximately when the Miracle purchased it. The other company we worked with, did the original one. This one it was approximately 2002 when they did that. Does that sound right?
Good to me.
You were here, right?
I think I lived here in Platteville at the time. So check the records.
I heard you installed it.
We did. We did. We had a lot of people volunteer.
I like how they all have like a lot of those same things, swing sets, cornholes, music things.
Yes.
There were some things that we had to have. Swing sets. The cornhole, he just went with that, which I think is kind of a cool addition. The swing sets and
So
the music.
we get by Harvest Daze? I know you said, in the letter, it says we're gonna try cornholes and Harvest Daze.
Sure.
Can't have one without the other. Moving forward.
And I was just talking with my family, like, do we need the 2 handicap swings? In our opinion, we'd go with 3 regular kid swings, the 2 kiddie swings, and 1 handicap swing. But that's
The only thing on certain stuff like that is there's a certain percentage.
right.
Like our parties.
And
Yep.
so I don't know what that, and I'm assuming if they put 2 in there, that's probably the number we need for this size.
Sure.
So I don't know that for sure, Spencer, but that's a lot of times how those scenarios get played out.
Did you discuss with Playwell additional add-ons if need be? Like add some swings, I mean, this is what the budget allows, but in the future, they can probably add some stuff on if need be.
I didn't specifically discuss that, so I don't want to put my foot down.
I'm guessing they probably can. It's just like our current system, David and I've tried, I mean, we're under kind of, under the fire with surf, so we've been told to replace that a long time ago. And you can't just replace a single component anymore, they don't make them.
Right.
So that's what's tough, so.
We can call Jason right now.
That's quite all right, we've already find that, so.
What's the material on the ground?
Wood chips still.
Is it wood chips?
Yeah, engineered wood fiber.
The engineered wood chips are actually an ADA approved that you can push a wheelchair or a stroller or something like that over. Whereas the pea gravel is safe for the fall zone and it gives the impact zone allowance, but it is not an ADA surface. That's why we had to replace all of it at the new park at Rogers Farm. We had to pull all the gravel out and go back to the engineered wood chips. You wouldn't think the wood chips are, that you could roll a wheelchair or a stroller or something over them, but they say that as long as you do the engineered wood chips, that they compact in such a way that
some of those playgrounds, they're using that recycled tires or rubber or something like that.
We looked at alternative surfaces, because it really adds a very cool look to the playground when you do something like that, and you can have designs in there, and I mean, the playground just pops, right? But it's super expensive. I mean, we really spend most of our budget, if not all, on the surfacing.
Right.
Now, one of the things I'll tell you right now, the service is gonna want us to do is some type of a landing pad coming off that walkway, because there's one there now, and they're after me at the other 2 parks to get them put in. And so it's some kind of a rubberized landing pad that you can get over the curb with a wheelchair, with a stroller or something like that. So we'll have to figure that out.
We'll add those. Are we required to have some kind of signage of rules and by Nick?
I know, it's not so much rules as size allowances,
Yeah.
weights or recommended heights type thing on there, and I think that that's standard, at least when we were looking at stuff with Churchage. They had some kind of standard signage that went with them, so you might double check with these guys, but, I'm sure they probably do, because that's just kind of a standard.
6 foot tall, right, that's right.
Did the budget be?
Yeah, I'm not gonna be
Yeah,
able
yeah.
to.
That you wanted to add out there behind the community center?
We have additional funds, I think 30,000, to add some kind of small feature over there. There's not a lot of room, but this has been the focus now because of the timeline of Harvest Daze. And I want to pull Janet into that conversation with Spencer in the committee to talk about that.
Well, we're gonna solicit proposals from both companies. I think part of me was like, I feel bad for churches going, just to be honest here, you guys can say that you're dumb, but I feel bad that churches put that time into the proposal and didn't get it, so I'm like, I wanna throw them the bone with the community center maybe, but maybe we just find the best one for the community, doesn't matter who it is, right? I mean, that's the part of the business. Right, it's part of the business, so.
And when we get to that, Troy, there's talking to Janet and looking at a location over there, which is not really easy because they're around ball fields of flying objects and cars. I had some ideas that we're gonna talk to the board about with Spencer and the Parks and Trails Creek later this summer. So that'll be a secondary priority, but this is our first priority.
And if we approve this thing, when would they have this done by?
The goal is to have it done before Harvest Daze is done.
Okay. Think that's realistic?
I don't know for sure, I'll be honest. I don't want to put my foot in my mouth.
What's the lead time for is it Jason? What'd he say on the lead time for manufacturing?
I think we should call it, I'll be honest, I don't know.
But I think the lady from Churches, I thought said like 10 to 11 weeks or
Sure, and I
something.
just got an email from her today that it's going up, everything, so, and the prices is going up too. So,
Is this price locked in?
This price is.
Okay.
30 days. From this time of quote.
Okay.
I apologize for not having that information for you.
No, it's not I was curious if we can get them by Harvest Daze. If not, I mean, I don't know if we told Jason if he's gonna guarantee anything. He's gonna be at the state.
Yeah.
We'll see. So
He knows that's our goal, is to have it done before our Harvest Daze festival.
And what I was talking to David, what we'll do is once we find out, a few weeks or whatever in advance, then we'll go in. Well, we won't mess with the playground now that we currently have. We'll leave it up for the summer, but 2 weeks prior roughly, we'll go in and take that old system out so it's not sitting there in demolition mode
Right.
for a long period of time.
Keep it usable as long as
Mhm.
possible. David, the cornhole boards are durable sheet steel powder coated.
Nice, okay. Are they permanently mounted?
They are.
Okay. And the only reason I asked that is we had actually looked at some concrete variety of them. The concrete variety, we may have to look at this on the steel ones too. They actually put a little ramp out in front, and I thought it was to keep your board, or your bags from sliding all the way off the board. But that was an anti-skater, anti-bike bump. So they weren't using the permanent as a ramp.
That's brilliant.
Put spikes in.
Yeah, don't drop your bag too short, you'll really be in trouble.
Bring extra bags.
And don't buy the expensive ones at Shields.
Well, Spencer, I appreciate you guys taking the
Yes.
lead on this because it's something with David and I, what we're working on now with wastewater and everything else.
We're happy to.
Yes,
Good
thank
job.
you.
Appreciate it.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? Item, can a motion, please?
I move to approve the agreement for services with the Playwell Playworks for equipment and installation of a new playground system at Lincoln Park in the amount not to exceed $150,000, subject to review by legal counsel and authorized mayor to execute.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please, Mary.
Nick Ralston, Spencer Bradnan,
Aye.
Troy Blum,
Aye.
Larry Clark,
Aye.
Jeremiah Overman,
Aye.
Mike Cooper.
Aye.
What do you call? Congrats, thank you.
Thank you.
Looking forward to it.
Next up is the backhoe bids. Mr. Rankin?
I
Mr.
defer.
Rankin. Mr. Rankin.
Thank you, Mrs. Mayor. I am gonna hand out a piece of paper or a spreadsheet here with a couple more pieces of information on it that weren't on the sheet that we sent out.
Is there not a video?
No, I don't have a cool video. Steve did send me one of those, so.
Video, no.
Well, maybe we can go back to the drawing board then, huh?
But,
Bar pretty high.
yeah, that's, we'll have to keep that in mind for the next one. But, Steve Gilligan, sorry, Steve, is, with Four Rivers Equipment, the John Deere dealer, and he just wanted, oh, you got yours, okay. He just wanted to be here tonight to answer any questions if we end up having any. I was shocked at, as you look at the total purchase price right there in the middle column, between the High Plains dealer with the New Holland and the Four Rivers John Deere, there was less than $400 difference on a $110,000 piece of equipment. So I was completely blown away and a little frustrated with that fact because I was looking for a bigger number difference that would make the decision a little easier to make. But then if you move on to the next column, everybody's saying we can have it by mid-July, which is basically 90 days out. New Holland did say they actually had some here in the U.S. that they could steal from somebody else and probably get to us a little bit sooner, but visiting with Steve and visiting with the cat dealer, they both would be, once we approve this, would be doing the same kind of thing, trying to get it to us a little sooner if possible. But basically, the New Holland was, we think mid-July, but they wouldn't necessarily guarantee that. So it's a mid-July, mid-June to mid-July timeframe, depending on who and what, that kind of thing. So then what I added to this was the trade-in values that everybody was allotting. And I don't know if we want to go that direction or if we want to try and sell it ourselves. I think we might make a few more bucks on it than we would make if we traded it in. But if you look at the, if you take the trade-in value prices that were put with each of these and then you take the final price there at the end, that makes it apparent that the John Deere from Four Rivers, if we factor in the trade-in value, would be technically the low bid package for the town. Now, I have worked with Steve for, I think it's been 4 years, Steve, that you and I, that you've been giving me budgetary numbers in the fall and chatting with me about it. We've borrowed a piece of equipment or two that we've used at Harvest Daze or at cleanup days that Steve got for us. Been doing the same thing with the cat dealer, but their prices were quite a little higher. High Plains, New Holland found our bid on BidNet, and that's why they jumped into the mix with us, and they're up in LaSalle. But after having some conversations, having it all this close together, I wanted to get some feedback from the board. If you guys had any opinions or experiences with the New Holland equipment or the John Deere equipment and that kind of thing.
So I have a couple of things.
Okay.
First, I received 3 phone calls today from people in and around this community who had heard through the grapevine that we were considering a New Holland versus a John Deere, and there was a $400 price difference, and we would be absolutely insane to go with New Holland over John Deere. I received 3 of those phone calls today. One, so equipment world savage. Let me tell you, holy smokes. They don't call me very often, these particular people.
Farm country, man.
Yeah, exactly. So one thing is parts availability. John Deere's parts are available, ready. That's a known fact. New Holland and Cat, well, I'm not sure. I have personal experience with Caterpillar. We are still waiting on a battery for our Cat equipment that we can't get. And so parts, even though Cat is an American company, parts are not readily available. New Holland parts are definitely not readily available. Also, the John Deere support, we have 3 John Deere locations, right? Fort Collins, Greeley, and Firestone.
Mead, that meter, right,
That's a John Deere green, not a John Deere yellow construction.
Oh, that's right.
So those are different. I had quite a bit of education today. Yeah.
So I guess next time I go buy my John Deere hat, I gotta look for yellow and green.
Yeah, that's right, you know.
Makes all the difference.
Exactly. Okay, the other thing that I was told is that resale value between John Deere and New Holland is, their resale value for John Deere is way better. So when we're done with it, ready for a new one, many years down the road, there's that perspective as well. So those are the 3 things that I was asked to bring to the board and make sure everybody understood. And then I was also told that several major farmers in the area have had really good luck with online auction, bigrig.com, bigiron.com, an online auction, and that they do really well if they, trying to sell used equipment. Just throwing that out there as well.
And I appreciate that. I haven't used that one. We've been approached by a couple others that are national sales where you can sell it as is, where is.
Yep, and that's
they have
exactly
to
what
come
this is.
get it
Yep.
here, or they have to pay the freight to get it there if they want to take it somewhere else or whatever.
Yep.
If we choose not to, and I don't have a preference one way or the other whether we take the trade-in value or whether we try to. I visited with Steve a little bit, and what I'm thinking we could get out of it is about what he's thinking he could get out of it if he takes it and puts it on the lot, but he's got to get it and cleaned up a little more and probably put a little yellow cap paint on there to try and make it look pretty again before they, so the two things that I was hoping to get out of the discussion tonight would be if there was a feeling one way or the other, and I'm at least getting a vibe from the mayor as to which direction I think. When I look at what the trade-in value and where that stacked up with everybody and what that made the final price to be, that kind of said, okay, if we do a little better by selling the trade-in ourselves, then we do better with that. Now, the thing I told Troy is I don't want the trade-in value to whether we sell it ourselves or the fund here, there's still some ideas because we're not spending everything that was in this fund, so we want to get the maximum we can out of it.
David, do you guys normally do maintenance? What was your plan for maintenance on the backhoe? Do you normally do it yourselves in-house? Do you hire the dealer to do it?
It's a little of both, depending on what it is. Now, having said that, when I got here 12 years ago, the machine was already 8 years old. So it was out of any kind of warranty or anything like that. So my guess is, part of what we included with this package was a 5-year, 50,000, or 5,000 hour, 50,000, you're gonna give me that, right? 5,000 hour warranty on the machine without a deductible and that kind of thing. So for the first 5 years, we're probably gonna be working pretty close with the dealership to make sure we stay within that warranty. After that time frame, we do our own oil changes and some other things like that with it on a routine basis. But if there's some bigger issues with them that we do run into sometimes, then John Deere has the mechanic truck, the mobile service. Sure. Caterpillar has the mobile service. It's not inexpensive to use, but that's depending on what the item is, Spencer, is how we've taken care of it. It's kind of been a mix of both.
So to that note, we bought 2 new pieces of equipment personally for our business several years back. We bought a Cat and we bought a John Deere. The John Deere ended up having an issue within a couple of weeks, and John Deere dropped everything, came to our job site, fixed it. We got done with it at the job site and we took it in, and they went through it with a fine-tooth comb. Never had a problem since. Our, at least, history with working with John Deere has been absolutely amazing. I can't say that Caterpillar hasn't been bad, and I have no experience with New Holland.
Right.
I know that John Deere has been amazing, and that is John Deere yellow, not green.
The only reason I asked that question is and Steve, you probably can elaborate and say both other these manufacturers are doing the same exact thing, but I know I've heard that John Deere is using proprietary software on their, basically like your car has a computer system, right? That what you can buy a tuner on eBay to hook up to that system and do your own thing with it. You can't do that with John Deere, at least from what I've read, is they kind of license their software so only they can work on it, and you can only get their sort of parts. So if you're someone like me who wants to work on everything yourself, and it's not a great road for you to hoe. It's a tough road to hoe in that sort of situation, right? But if you're a town or something, you're not going to call them to do the engine swap, or the engine goes out and you have them fix it themselves. So I don't think it's ever going to be an issue that we're going to run into, I guess.
At this point, at this stage of the game, some of what I call the shade tree mechanic type stuff, the oil changes, the hydraulic filter, some of those kinds of things, we've got guys in the shop that are able to do that. But when it comes to hardcore mechanicking, at this point, we don't employ anybody that's really got those skills, so we would end up, working with either, there's a guy just outside of town to the south that does every type of machinery. He's worked on our grader, which is a John Deere. He's worked on the current backhoe, which is the Cat, and he'll work on diesel farm trucks. So anyway.
Can I
Comment for
interject
you and a
something?
question for Steve.
So, your question, that's the truth with a lot of the vendors now. And unfortunately, the route we've went with our emissions, they're so complicated. The good backyard mechanics are kind of getting left behind. And there is truth to what you're saying, but it's not just John Deere. You're looking at Caterpillar, you're looking at Komatsu, you're looking at New Holland. All the vendors are getting to where the software, and I've got a second party that I use out of Port Lupton, has the software for all the machines. So, an individual like me that has a skid steer, it's not financially feasible to go out and get the software to work on my one piece, where it used to be you could do all this in your backyard. And unfortunately, we've kind of done it to ourselves because of the technology and the emissions. It's changed our whole world the last 5 to 7 years. Has changed our world, and it's made it a lot tougher. So,
sure.
I feel bad for that because I'm like you. I got a brother that's a very intelligent mechanic, and you used to overhaul engines. You used to put pistons in. You used to be able to put a cam in, and everybody's idea of an engine overhaul is you get it and it's a reman or a long block. It's not. You get the good old guy that comes in and diagnoses it, and rebuilds it, and our world has changed so much, and trust me, it's a very tough position to be in. Excuse me.
I think they take it as far as like integration of parts. I don't know what level, but I've heard where you can't even change a part unless you tell the computer that you changed that part, because it can tell what part was on it versus what is the new part, sort of thing.
Yeah, that's
not that far.
No, it's not that far. I mean,
That's just the Teslas.
Sure.
Mr. Clark, you had a comment.
Yeah, first of all, in regard to the trade-in versus you may be able to get more later, but then again, you may not. I would advocate for just doing the trade-in on the bird in hand theory. It's done, you know how much you're gonna get, and it's out of the yard. Your new one's in, the old one's out. You're gonna sit around and maybe get an extra $1,500 for it, but maybe not. So when we just weighing all that in, that's how I feel about it. And a question for you, Steve. I know that John Deere has numerous manufacturing plants across the United States. Do you know can you tell me where they make up this backhoe?
Dubuque, Iowa.
Dubuque, okay.
Yep, so it's an American-made machine,
Well,
and it's
oh,
made.
yeah, I've toured several of their facilities in my travels.
Nice.
So I just wondered which one.
Yeah, and you know, guys, if something else that you can do on that trade, and I don't know if the other vendors will do this for you or not, but, and I guess maybe I should wait for a decision, but something else, if we trade this, you can say, you know what, let's trade it. Between now and the time that yours comes in, you guys are in a wonderful ag community here, and you got a lot of farmers that'd love to have that backhoe. And you've probably got some local town people that'd like to have that backhoe. This isn't a make or break. If we get to the point where we deliver your backhoe and you say, so-and-so over here would like to buy that backhoe, we're gonna get more money out of it. I'm all about helping the town. If you guys can do better, if we get to that point where your new backhoe's here and your backhoe's still out here and you've had no interest in it, guess what, I'll be glad to take it. But you're gonna have that 60 to, let's just say a 90-day window to be safe, maybe sooner than that, but whatever window we have, you guys can start looking to try and sell that backhoe, and I'll work at it too to try and sell it and help you guys pre-sell it. And if we gotta let it go a little bit early, we'll bridge that gap with something to get you by so you're not left without.
Well, that's very generous of your
Yes.
part.
Yeah, I mean, you know what, at the end of the day, it's all the taxpayers' money we're spending, so I look at it a little bit different. I wanna be here to help you guys, and I didn't come here to get a backhoe bid. I come here because I wanna be part of the community that I'm taking money away from. That's why I wanna be here, and if I can help, and we can put that together, you know, who knows what's gonna happen in the next 90 days. I might not even be here to deliver your new backhoe, but I think that would be fair, and that way you can ride both sides of the fence.
Yeah.
If we get to the point where your new one comes in and you have no interest, let's trade it.
Wow. Thank
Appreciate
you.
that, Steve.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome, guys.
Can't beat that.
All right.
Is there whatever you value just to keep it?
That's what I was gonna ask.
I get and I can see, you know, from a monetary piece, trading it in where the benefit is. And I guess my question is, what does it cost to keep it from a maintenance perspective? Right? So if say, Four Rivers is saying they'll give us 18,000 for it. From a maintenance perspective, at what point will we spend $18,000 on maintenance to keep it? Is it 5 years, 10 years?
Well,
Or does it depend on part failure, right? If the engine breaks tomorrow, whatever. But
very much that. I mean, we had a hydraulic issue in the last 7 months or so. It was about $3,500. Put new tires on it when we slashed one, and the other ones were getting worn down. So the machine's got new tires on it now. It's getting somewhat tired, but it's still in decent shape. If the board says, you know what, hang on to it for now so that we've got a second machine to use if we need it for the time being, and then we decide to, you know, okay, you know what, a year from now, we're not using it as much as we thought we might, let's go ahead and get rid of it. I mean, the town owns it, so, and we've got the money set aside right now. We're still under what we had set aside to purchase a new hoe. All of these prices came in good shape as far as what we had budgeted. So, you know, I guess at this stage of the game, we can make a decision on which hoe we're gonna purchase, and then we can figure out over the next 90 days whether we're gonna trade it in, or if we wanna keep it ourselves, or what we wanna do, and go from there.
I just know I talked to the public works guys and they're always talking about like the lack of equipment, right? We don't have enough, or this, that, whatever. It's like, well, if we have 2 of them, you know, what does that do? You know, you can have a guy up at the cemetery and you can have a guy over here fixing the water line break.
Well, and one of the things that we're doing, I showed it on there, the front fork attachment. Right now, the bucket we have got a set of forks that goes on the front of that. But part of what this new front fork attachment will allow us to do is we'll actually be able to see what we're doing with the forks versus having a bucket in the way right now, because our current set of forks attaches to the outside of our existing bucket. So it'll be a safety factor. And we're also getting this machine with the quick connect front and rear attachment options, so that if we decided to put, I mean, we could put one of those snow blade things on the front of it if we decided to, right, Steve? That would be a quick connect type thing, but then we would still have, you know, yes, could we use the other hoe? Probably. Would it, I mean, obviously, we get a brand new John Deere sitting out there in the old cat, which one are they gonna take if they've got an option? You know, but, yes, it probably could be. I don't know whether to go down this rabbit trail or not.
There's something else he wants, but I would recommend taking the trade in and some of John Deere, because he wants a skid steer as well, and that'll be coming up next. Which is more practical for cemetery use, irrigation fixes.
Very
The
true.
backhoe is not very practical, so I.
Why didn't you just lead with that?
Because I was told not to.
It was a truck last year, and now a backhoe, now a skid steer.
Oh.
I know earlier on in this conversation, a couple of months back, you were talking about attachments and auxiliary equipment that would hook up to this. Although I don't see any of that in front of me. Would you like to speak to that?
Yes, I would be happy to. Included in this is the hydraulic thumb.
Yeah.
So on the digging arm, that's factored in. I asked the vendors to not even show that as a potential option. Then Steve and the rest of the vendors showed us the front forks, which the guys all agreed that that was something that we needed. We also got a price from Steve and the rest of the vendors on a hydraulic hammer, which after discussion and the costs that are associated with that, the guys are like, you know, like, and I don't have them right in front of me, they were anywhere from, I want to say $6,500 to $9,200 depending on the vendor. For that hydraulic hammer, the compactor, the hydraulic compactor that would go on the end of the arm. We've got a fairly good size walk behind compactor, and then we've got the jumping jack compactor. And the guys looked at the prices on both of those, on those other pieces of equipment, and said, you know, we won't use it often enough to really justify that amount of expense. And they didn't, the only piece, and I talked to the entire public works crew, the only piece that they came to me and said they really wanted out of all of those options that they felt like we could justify, even reasonably justify the cost on, was the forks. The rest of them, they were like, those would be a nicety, but we may use them once a year, if that. You know, the compaction, you might use it at the cemetery, but honestly, it's heavy duty enough that I'm afraid we might break a bolt with it. And I don't want to go down that path. I dealt with one broken bolt in my 13 years, and that I don't want to do that again if we can help it.
Something else to keep in mind on those attachments, those are high maintenance items, and we always have them, or New Holland probably always has them, Caterpillar always has them, and they'll match up to what you guys have. So if you run into a street project or something that you got to use them on, they're available, and they are, them hammers and them plate compactors are very high maintenance item.
So we would have but we did outfit the John Deere is coming with all the quick connects and the controls so that we can run those types of equipment regardless, so that we would have those. And thank you, Steve, because I had forgot that part that you had pointed out, that the rental on those for the once in a while, I mean, we can probably rent it a lot of weeks for the $9,500 or the $7,200 that one of them was going to run, you know. So that's kind of where we were at with that.
For several years, Dave and I talked about initially getting a skid steer for some of the uses the backhoe doesn't work well with. And, you know, it's lighter, it would be much better on the old part of the cemetery. So, yeah, keep them both, or keeping the old one might be an option, but I think for the bang of our buck, and David knows he's gonna be under budget on this, so that's why he's kind of dancing around, you know, So I think we'll bring that up at another
You
time.
taught him well.
Dave and I had a conversation earlier today
Uh-huh.
that just because we set your budget 140 doesn't you spend 140, okay? Because I come under budget every time I do.
And we did.
And then you're blow on something.
Good steer.
We always talk about sewer good right now.
Okay, is there any other questions, comments, or concerns?
I would move to approve the purchase of a backhoe from John Deere Four Rivers in the amount of $110,150 as presented, and authorize the mayor to execute required purchase documents.
Second.
A motion and a second. Roll call, please, Mary.
Spencer Bradnan,
Aye.
Troy Blum,
Aye.
Larry Clark,
Aye.
Jeremiah Overman,
Aye.
Mike Helper,
Aye.
Nick Ralston.
All right, beautiful. Thank you, Steve, for coming tonight.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you guys, I appreciate you letting me have part of your time and let me be part of the community, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Please let the local farmers know that we're John Deere.
Yeah. Wait, let's have some fun with this, okay? Man, that was brutal today, let me tell you.
On call to the mayor, right?
Oh, we sure have.
Oh, my. Well, thank you all very much.
Yes, congratulations.
Skid steer next, huh?
Moving on to Union Pacific Railroad, Will County Road 32, crossing improvements and closures, Mr. Regan.
All I'll say, this is an unfunded mandate, and David was approached by this repair by Union Pacific, kept me informed of it, and has some costs to talk to you about, but it's not really an option for us at this time.
So, basically the railroad called up and said, we've got this, we wanna fix the tracks over here at County Road 32, east of Highway 85, and I said, that's great. And he said, are you sitting down? And I said, well, I'm driving. And he says, he says, well, I said, so you're talking sometime next year, and so you're calling to, so we can budget this and schedule for it. And he goes, no, we'd like to do it April 6th. They want to start today. And I said, well, that's really not an option. And I said, what's our next best choice? He said, April 20th. And I said, wow, you guys are giving us lots of time. And I said, send me everything in an email so that I've got a paper trail on what's going on, what you're asking, and that kind of thing. So they did, and so I politely sent it back and said, the town really doesn't care about the railroad as far as the crossing.
You want to rephrase that?
It's really not relevant to us, so I don't know why we should have to pay any of it. So then they sent back, was it a 40-page document that's the state statute and everything else that says that
You do?
we are blessed to be able to have our road cross the railroad track, and that we could be responsible for 50% of the job. And they're saying just in materials, not counting labor, just their section was $75,000 in track stuff, and so they were gifting it to us that they would cover that if we took care of the asphalt patching and the traffic control. So, got some bids on that. Those are in front of you, and all total we're in this thing for about $14,000-$15,000.
Let's get started.
I just said the same thing Mike
You
did.
can take it out at the same time.
It's
It's easier.
But we received two different paving companies bid the project. One of them came in about $13,000. That was J.D. Chavez, who we've used for a lot of years. And then St. Vrain Companies, who did all of our patching this last year for us, they came in at about $9,900. Now, this includes 3 feet on the east side of the tracks, 5 feet on the west side of the tracks, and 8 feet in the middle of the tracks that will be repaved. And then there, where St. Vrain had started going up Cemetery Hill last fall and doing that overlay for us, we're starting the trucks now have worn out the weak spot just on the downhill side of that, and we're getting some pretty good potholing again, east of the tracks. So this bid also include them coming in to do a 2-inch mill and then overlay for 25 feet south of the overlay they did last fall, and then in the westbound traffic another 25 feet beyond that, because that's really wearing out where they come off of Front Street to go westbound over to the light to get on 85. So this does have an extra $4,000 in it, but we've already got the traffic control and we've got the road closed, so now would be the time to go ahead and do that. So that's why we asked them to go ahead and give us that extra piece of the mill and overlay to go there. So so what we're asking for is approval so that I can send an email to the railroad and say, yep, go ahead and do the work that you're planning to be in there on the 20th and do, and I can go ahead and have American-wide Protective is the group that acquired Northern Colorado Traffic Control, who we've used for years out of the Greeley area for doing our traffic stuff. I didn't, because we've used them before and I knew they already kind of had our road set up because we've done this detour 3 or 4 times over the years, it was easier to use them because they could just go back and grab what they had in their files as far as traffic control plans versus having to hire somebody else come in and go to the trouble to do that. So this does, the traffic control includes variable message boards for 2 or 3 days on the east and westbound before they close it, and then variable message boards on north and south 85 for the entire duration of the project, just to keep people informed as to what's going on. We're looking at closing it Tuesday morning, April 20th, and being opened then Friday night or Saturday morning that weekend. Railroad's saying the railroad will be in on the 20th. They'll pull the tracks, and then I believe on the 21st put the tracks back. They'll run rail traffic then for the afternoon and evening of the 21st and part of the 22nd, and then we can come in and do the paving late on the 22nd or the 23rd, depending on how things go. So they're doing both the crossing or the siding and the main track at that crossing. So.
Haven't we been trying to get them to fix this for a while?
Yeah, they've come in and done some minor repairs. The way that I'm understanding it now, they're coming in and this is going to be a significant repair. Hopefully to the point that if in the next couple of years we're able to get the funds set aside to go ahead and concrete that intersection like we'd like to do over there and get that whole thing done. We were trying to coordinate and had been talking to them about when we closed it down to do the concreting, that they could do the railroad then, but obviously we got it on their radar enough finally that they decided they were gonna do this with, 3 weeks notice to the town.
Well, that it sounds like with or without you.
Right, and whether they were just gonna send us a bill for $50,000, because I didn't, to be honest with you, I did not read all 40 pages of the state statute.
I just read what pertained to us, but I did jump on the email string with David, and I informed him quite bluntly. I said, we're a small community with a fixed budget. I did not appreciate in any way, shape, or form for them giving us unfunded mandate in 60 days.
Yeah.
So they promised me nothing was coming up the rest of this year at the intersections that we'd be responsible for. And in the future, they'd give you one advance notice, so we could budget accordingly. And that, David did a nice job of responding to everyone involved in Union Pacific, including supervisors, so we got a decent response back. So hopefully that's corrected for the future.
Good.
So.
You can tear it all out and we'll put in the new water lines down from the water tower.
Those are gonna get bored under, Mr. Clark.
Well, we're gonna keep all those contacts, names and numbers.
Oh, yeah.
Legal counsel agrees with Union Pacific's assessment that Platteville is on the hook for this.
I read the PC statute, it's pretty well known, so.
Yeah.
And,
It's ours.
it's ours, yeah.
I knew that was the answer, I just tried bluffing them to see if we could put it on.
When they send me direct statute, I'm not gonna bother paying the attorney to read it, so.
I wasn't as politically correct as the town manager was in my response, Spencer. I wasn't bad, but.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns?
Don't you feel privileged to have the railroad go through town?
Don't I have what, I'm sorry?
Don't you feel privileged to have the town, have the railroad go through it?
I do now.
Wasn't that what they were trying to convince you of?
Yes, something along those lines.
Mhm.
I would entertain a motion then.
I move to approve it. Additional improvements at County Road 32 near Front Street in the amount not to exceed $14,000 and authorize the mayor to execute necessary agreements upon review by legal counsel as presented.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Roll call please, Mary.
Troy Blum,
Aye.
Larry Clark,
Aye.
Jeremiah Overman,
Aye.
Mike Kelper,
Aye.
Nick Ralston, Spencer Brennan.
Aye.
All right. Moving on to reports. We have Naomi.
Hello, everyone. Everybody received my paper copies, I guess online copy of my report. Since it's my first one, I thought I would introduce, at least on paper, all of my staff. And that's everyone on there. While I was sitting here, yes, I was paying attention, but I also counted how many years together we have in Platteville and Nantes, and that is over 78 years of experience just at Platteville and Nantes. It's actually quite a bit more if you add Mary Schaefer's and Janice Fisher's experience. They both were career librarians in other locations before they came to us part-time, as they are semi-retired. We are hoping to get a high school intern by the end of this school year so that we have an extra person, and that way we can open up Saturdays in Platteville as well. Right now we don't have enough staff for Saturdays, and then also be able to have enough staff during the week because we're all full-time. The materials stuff is just, I have to tell you, I'm new and they all know I'm new and they all saw me coming. And so all the vendors they're circling me like sharks. And it's been difficult. It's been difficult for me because I do naturally have a thrifty nature, but I also really love books. So I'm trying to find a happy medium there. But we'll get there. I have a really good staff. They'll stop me before I spend too much. I'm going to skip over the open close stuff because that's a little bit more, especially since I brought up our policy. And then I'll come back to that at the end. Our programs, our new program coordinator at Yesenia Boteo Negrete has some really fun programs coming up. And in fact, the online tarot program is tomorrow night at 6:30 and it's all online. I guess that's the big thing on TikTok right now with teenagers is looking at tarot something or other. So she found somebody who was willing to do like a beginner tarot program online with the kids. Although anyone is welcome, well, mostly teenagers and adults are welcome to join that. I'm not sure we're encouraging anyone younger than 13 years old. Summer reading is mostly booked. This year's theme, I didn't write it on here, this year's theme is Tales and Tales, so it's all about animals. And I think she's got some really fun stuff planned. I don't want to steal her thunder, so I won't tell you everything, but it's going to be a lot of fun. And she regularly has new take and make craft projects that people can just come and pick up from the library. The really big exciting thing we've got coming up next is Part of a Building, and that will be a Rocky Mountain PBS documentary series, and Nantes Library will be the premier pilot episode. And it is a very eco-friendly building. It actually, when we built it, it was the only net zero library in the United States. Our architect is the one who submitted the project. I didn't even know this was going on. She submitted the project to Rocky Mountain PBS, and then we were chosen. They are going to be filming over the summer. And they actually expect to premiere around Earth Day of next year, so about a year from And so now we'll go back to open and close. And policy. So we are currently, both buildings are only open for curbside delivery. I just found out today that the middle school has reopened. So Platteville Public Library will be open tomorrow, as I guess COVID normal. And then I found out that they will at least have the high school partially reopened on Fridays, so Nantes Library will be open on Friday as COVID normal. So we did that based on a policy that we wrote originally in 2009. The H1N1, which if I remember right, it was a swine flu, and it was kind of a stomach flu. So, and we wrote that. Well, okay, first of all, I guess you all need to know that most people who work in libraries are very germophobic. And we actually generally, there's always at least one person on staff who is, manages to catch everything that's going around. You look at a kid who has the sniffles and they're down for it. So, and we also have a history of families bringing their children in when they are sick to get materials to keep them entertained while they are sick. We have literally had children come in their pajamas from the doctor's office, come in and check out materials from us. And so with the high incidence of chance for spread in our building, and the fact that we had at the time in 2009 a lot of staff who just would get sick at a drop of a hat, we went ahead and created this emergency closure procedure, which we actually never had to use because the school never had to close because they had so many kids being out with the swine flu. But it stayed in the policies, our employee handbook. And it actually, we ended up having to use it because of COVID. So we are not quite as strict as what our policy says. Our policy says that we would only allow people to come and pick up materials between 10 and noon. And we actually are allowing people to come pick up materials from 10 until 6. We do, and originally it was just supposed to be picking up materials, and we have figured out ways so that people can print, fax, photocopy. They just bring it to the front door, they email it to us, and then we take care of it for them and bring it out to them, which is not something that we used to have in mind, but we figured out how to make that work. But again, like I said, tomorrow Platteville will be going back to normal. So, and for us, COVID normal is pretty much business as usual, except everyone has to have a mask indoors, and we can't have more than 10 people in addition to staff at any one time. So, did anybody have any questions about my new report or our policy?
Any other questions, comments, concerns? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Naomi.
Sure, no problem. Good to see you all.
See you in a couple weeks, huh?
I mean, if you really need me, but I'm not sure.
Now here comes budget time. No sense.
I think I'm scheduled to come back in July.
We try to do quarterly at least, probably.
Well, that'll be good because that'll be about halfway through summer reading program, so I can give you more specifics about what's going to be happening for us, and also what our plans are for Harvest Daze.
All right, thank you, thank you. All right, moving on to Mr. Rankin.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple, a handful of items in my report. A couple things I'll talk about. The town clerk position, there's 2 finalists. Avery helped with the Murray, also had a couple of clerks from the Kono and Lockwood. Is that correct? They're very helpful in the interview process. So, looking at 2 finalists that do have current government work experience, and I'm doing a final interview Thursday afternoon with one, and then Friday I'll be gone visiting with the other one. So on the April 20th meeting, I'll talk to Mayor first, obviously, about make her introduction to the board, because you as a board appoints this position. I can't hire him without your authority. So And then Mary will stay with us, as we then pursue a vacancy position we've had for several months now in the front office besides that. So, I mean, obviously we don't have a vacancy now with Mary, but front desk. So, mentioned the Harvest Daze. I sent out an update to all the committee members. This training, the 402 ICS training with Will County, this is specifically for elected officials. It's just a short 2-hour training coming up on May 6th. If you're available, please let me know, at least by the end of the week, if not tomorrow or Thursday. And there's a registration with Denise Bradshaw with Will County OEM. I'll just put all her names on there who wants to go. And she said it's not at the training center, it's at the admin in the large event. They'll do like the end of the county city dinner.
Town and county.
There you go, in that room, so they can play it. So let me know, it's informative, it's educational, but it's something that, like all the elected officials, just to go through and the online course, so you have some basic background knowledge that during a severe event. The last time I really implemented myself directly was when we had the 08 tornadoes and the 13 floods, you know, talking to the mayor. We didn't really do any emergency declaration, we really didn't need to, but there was a lot of coordination going on. So, David, Melissa, and Brad Person, I met about capital projects. This afternoon we had a long, lengthy meeting about scheduling items. Brad, Curtis, is looking to use some estimates. We have a lot of design to be done. We're waiting on CDOT, probably the next couple of weeks, to give us a final plan approval on the Division Boulevard sidewalk project. And David and Brad working with Excel. I think we have 2 poles to relocate, or one to locate and one underground, basically. We're by the library. So we're working on that. So there's some detail work to be involved with that. Reynolds Avenue, Thursday afternoon at 2 is the walkthrough with Excel and Luke McConnell and the contractor.
And CenturyLink and their contract.
And CenturyLink. And Mr. Curtis will do that walkthrough, and hopefully by then we'll have a ballpark of when they'll start. So I'm pushing them to start soon so we can actually get road paid by the end of the year, because that's a budget project. That's a big budget project this year, other than the wastewater plant. And then chip sealing and patching, we've been talking about, but there's annexing the Dice property in town. We talked about that. We'll get that done in the next few months. Again, survey needs to occur so we can meet those obligations. That will go through the public hearing process, like we did recently with A677 State Highway 66. So that's annexation, and it's with the Fall State statute. Subdividing Lot B, that's just a subdivision, minor subdivision plat. I'll sign off on that administratively, so that takes about 2 months to do. But some of those basic updates on those projects. But I'm watching the budget pretty close, and I'll explain why next month when we have a study session. So we really want to drop our debt obligation and wastewater as much as I can. So,
How's the revenues looking?
so far so good. I was talking to David Green. He'll have our March financials to me by Friday, to Mary and I by Friday, but sales tax is still holding pretty strong. Not quite as it used to be prior to COVID, but it's still stronger than I thought it would be. And then, to my knowledge, there's no deferment this year on property tax, so those are starting to come in. And our AGAs or use tax or service tax, I mean, some of that stuff won't come until the end of the year. But it seems optimistic. But again, it's the first quarter, so we'll see. More like when the summer rolls through. I mentioned a joint session of the Board and Planning Commission. It may be just a board meeting, board study session recommendation, but by the next meeting on the 20th, I'll see if we have enough on the May 4th agenda to have that meeting. If not, I may recommend canceling it to do a study session. If there are items that we need to take care of, or you need to, then I'm going to recommend a study session on the 11th, that second Tuesday. And that will be an important study session with Kim Crawford to talk about the wastewater funding. We'll have some detailed information for you to consider at that time. Arbor Day, coming up at the end of the month, it's on Monday this year. Again, I'll be there. Spencer, I sent you an invite to with your committee members. And Amy, the principal, will be there with the 5th grade class. And we will have pre-packaged goodies of some kind. I'm not sure what we're going to give them, but
Anybody know a good speaker for, like, the Forest Service isn't available, or because of COVID restrictions, they're not sending someone out to do the presentation that they normally do, so. I think we talked about it at the committee, yeah, like, reach out to the
At
university.
That'd be great. Some kind of arborist from that.
I just didn't know if anyone, a name popped in anyone's head that, oh, you should talk to.
There's one in town. I don't remember.
When you think about it next week.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know any myself, but I think that'd be a great addition to have.
Right.
I
I thought that was when I went to the one time, that was my favorite part, was the
Yes.
guy that was talking about trees.
Yes.
And how about Nebraska and how it all started.
Sure.
Absolutely.
You think Reynolds Avenue will be paved in time for Harvest Daze, correct? Has to be, right?
I hope it is, but it all depends on
Just
CenturyLink. I'm not worried about.
This
It's
guy.
Excel.
Not a chance.
Pessimist.
No, pessimist is an optimist with
The way,
experience.
the way this is going to turn out, in my prediction, is they're gonna wanna break ground the first week of August. I'm gonna tell them no, because we have Harvest Days. So it's gonna be delayed until September. I have a gut feeling that's what's gonna happen. And I can't guarantee anything. And I've been pushing hard, just like, we've gotta get this done, guys.
CenturyLink has already applied to come in and do it. We put them off for a week just to have the pre-con tomorrow, or Thursday. So that we can make sure that where they're putting it, our engineering staff is comfortable with where that is, so that we don't sign off on something that then their CenturyLink lines are in our way. CenturyLink actually debated on whether it was worth redoing the lines or just ripping them off the poles and walking away and saying, well, any customers over there are out of luck.
They actually thought about that?
Yeah, that's one of the options.
Oh my God.
Because so many people have cell phones anymore, Adrian, that.
I still think there's I think there's still a requirement for them to provide phone POTS lines for 911 services.
And there may be, and that might be why they've actually designed the plan to put it, but they said that part of the time, they look at a situation and they just tear down what's there and walk away, because they don't have enough customers to make it worth their while. So.
Interesting.
So who's the holdup then? So not CenturyLink?
CenturyLink's ready to go. We're meeting with Excel, so I'm guessing that Excel, I'm hoping that we have all of the undergrounding done before Harvest Daze, but then I don't know that we can get our storm drain and pavement done between the undergrounding of the electrical and the CenturyLink lines. I don't think we have a big enough window to be done enough that we can do Harvest Daze.
So they're not all going to underground into the same place? They're going to do 3?
There will be multiple conduits underground. CenturyLink will have theirs, Excel will have theirs. Part of the bid that we're putting out is to put some additional handholds and at least one conduit, so that in the future, if we get a fiber optic company that comes into town, at least that portion, they can just pull the new fiber wire through that. It may not be ideal locations, it may not be perfect as to what they would do if they were in here now and designing it, but we're trying to give them at least something.
So it's pretty common, or this is the way it's done, that each company has their own conduit?
Yes.
But same trench, right?
Yeah.
Not always.
Oh.
Not always.
Most cases, it's a joint trench.
It can be.
Utilities, so like power has to be, I think power and like teleco type stuff, they have to be at least 18 inches apart, things like that. There's certain things that are in place for that, but in most scenarios, you get a joint trench. I haven't been out there, so I don't know.
Yeah, and that's very true, depending on whether it's new construction and it's open excavation, or whether they're boring it, but because each of them is bringing their own contractor in and boring. It may be proximity, but it's not gonna be the same trench necessarily. But you're right, telephone and power can be in the same trench.
Interesting.
Absolutely. They just don't like water and sewer in the same one.
For obvious reasons.
I prefer it not to be in the same one myself too.
Well, there's a minor issue that ties into Reynolds Avenue. Earlier this week, I had a call from a resident who lives on the basically west side of Reynolds, and there's a handful of residents in Platteville and Reynolds that get their mailbox or mail from the open mailboxes there by over across from where Troy lives with their division. And during the last few weeks, someone's been taking all their mail, swiping it. One lady was, basically got scammed for $4,000 because they got her checkbook, because her checks came in the mail. So long story short, she called me, talked to the postmaster, and the postmaster said the town had some involvement as far as, and I have never been through this before, but either pouring the pad for, because they want a lockbox like everybody else does, like I do on Reed, where the mail is secure. Otherwise, they have to get a post office box. And I told her I'd work with them. I'm waiting on the postmaster call, but more than likely my recommendation is relocate that from that location over to where they actually live. Because other than the renters that's in Earl Ryder's old house, all the other residents who get mail there live on the west side of the river, or in Reynolds, over by the river. So when we do that sidewalk connection around that corner by Paul's house, we might look at a place there for another mailbox stand for those people. And there might be a small cost involved, but I said, I think the town should help them out if we can. It's not gonna be much. And the lady I spoke to said most of the tenants or the property owners, so they'd all chip in and pay for it too. They just don't want the mail stolen all the time.
And
So
that
that's-
skid steer fund keeps shrinking.
So we may-
Welcome to my life for the last 13 years, Jeremiah.
You've never had it so good.
I'm not arguing.
Other than that, the financial audit went well while they were here. They're wrapping that up. That'll come to the board. David Green thought the second meeting of May. I haven't confirmed that yet, but that report will be given to the board in May, likely. Thursday, I meet with Nick Bailey, our SURSA rep, to do, David will be available to do our annual SURSA audit. And then we'll, probably won't David, because David will have to make that 2 o'clock meeting. My office SURSA's at 1, so I'll probably be late. But that's going well. The things are really, pretty good day to day. Little thing like Richie Pike called, I mean, he wants to, the Rotary Club wants to do the landscaping down at the Christmas tree lot. Part of the fence broke down, we're working on that idea. Todd wants to put in a split rail, which I think is a great addition, but then everything's visible behind it. So then I talked to Daryl about painting his house, so on and on and on we go, so things like that. So.
Did Richie talk about John here?
I haven't called him back yet,
Oh.
sorry.
I expect to hear that from him
As soon as we get on the phone, other things happen later, I'm sorry. I do want to throw out one last thing that I received in the mail yesterday. Tonight at 7, the same time as our board meeting, Fort Lupton was having a public hearing on an IJ with Firestone on camera 19. Yeah.
Interesting.
So,
I don't see
Nothing
that.
like last minute.
on the back page of this, you'll see some maps. I'm not too overly concerned because it's a joint boundary on 19 south of County Road 24, which is our southern boundary on both sides. But this is, I think, step one of the potential step 2 of going up to 66 with Firestone. I have reached out to the manager of Firestone. We had some email back and forth to schedule a meeting, which hasn't happened yet. So this is a public document. The meeting was tonight. Melissa called, and this meeting was going to be held virtually, so people could log into the website. But they did inform Melissa that they recorded this meeting. It would be uploaded, be available to view tomorrow. So I'll find some time to log in and look at what was said.
Okay.
But I'm going to reach out again before the end of the week to, I can't remember his name right now, I apologize, but he's from Erie, but he's the town manager at Firestone. And
Manchi?
what's that?
Lamanchi? Lamanchi?
No, he left a long time ago. He's like 3 managers that go to Firestone, but West Lamanchi. But I told him it's time for us to sit down because of the 66 corridor in our interest. Also, right there at Miller Farms on the west side of 19, on the south side of 66, is United Remix Concrete Company. It's not United Remix here. They own that corner. They have an application with Will County to a large gravel mining operation. So I get a referral on those properties because it's in our boundary. I submit a referral response back, Town of Platteville will be interested in annexing that property. Primarily, it is a revenue source, potentially, from sand and gravel operations, but also to deter Firestone from grabbing it first. I'll be blunt, that's what I'm gonna do. And I haven't had a response back yet. Other than annexing, there's no other cost because 66 is a state highway, we don't own that road. So it'd be similar to 8677, state highway 66. So it's a strategic move.
Yep.
So Firestone's trying to go over to 19 and take, or just working out agreement with this size.
Then Fort
Firestone, this is
Lupton,
Fort Lupton.
Chris Cross, the manager of Fort Lupton, called me last month, told me this was coming. So he's been open with me the whole time. We have a good dialogue. And we had lunch here about a month ago, talk about some other projects, wastewater, for example. And he said this was on the table. He didn't know the details, but they're wanting to do a joint boundary like we have with Meade or with other town or with Fort Lupton. And it's
Every
on
town except for.
both sides of 19. 19 is their dividing line. 24 to the north, which is our southern boundary, 2 miles south of 66, and it goes down south of 10, just north of County 16. So it's not an immediate impact, but it just irritates me a little bit that I didn't get this referral until 24 hours before the public hearing. And I'm not blaming Chris, but I need to have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I don't want something pulled off behind their back, to be honest with you.
No. So was Melissa able to attend, or was she counting on the?
She wasn't able to attend, but she called and spoke to a planner about it, and then she'll review it tonight, but she didn't say it online, because it was just a public comment, is what it was.
Didn't sound like any of this was really groundbreaking. You've pretty much known that they were doing this right there in that corridor anyways, right?
And it's just outside our boundary, but we try to respect our surrounding community, doing send a little bit of advance notice and dialogue. It's just a phone call courtesy. It's like, hey, this is what we're working on. We do that with me, Fort Lupton, Milliken, and Gilchrist.
It's pretty groundbreaking that Firestone's actually signing an IGA with anybody. So we really need to be watching.
And that's the big
that
thing.
one as well.
Because when Wes Levanti was our manager, 6-7 years ago, we sat down at Bella Rosa Golf Course and had a cup of coffee, and we talked IJs. He said their door at the time, the IJ is, okay, we'll do an IJ on paper, it's not worth anything, it's just first come, first served. If you can take it, we'll get it. We'll just send a referral. And it's like bringing somebody the paper, it's not worth our time.
Right.
So, but I know I'm coming out a little aggressive about Firestone. It just irritates me that, you lack of common courtesy and professional courtesy, you would call, because that's right at our border.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I'll close with that. Refer back to you.
Anybody else?
I got something for Troy, it says Dave's here. We talked about this, when they resurfaced 32.5, and they took those poles off that corner there, by the,
It's 25.
25, and I thought that was gonna be a turn lane for trucks. And remember, the poles got moved and pushed back and stuff, but there was.
It got widened, but it's not, there wasn't a turn lane specifically gonna be put in there, but with the poles moved, they widened that out almost 6 feet.
Okay.
And so there is more
More
room.
radius.
Although I noticed that no sooner had the pole got moved than the mailbox that was there got
Yeah.
completely destroyed.
Well, this morning when I was cruising before work, I was taking a loop through there, and there's a semi that was turning, coming southbound, it was turning going west. And he flagged me through, he wanted me out of the way, so I was going westbound. And I watched him remember where he made the right turn, but when he had enough room to, there was a grain hauler, and his back wheels clipped those mailboxes. It's still not wide enough.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Curious if that.
I know, it's just, I thought there was more to be done, or there told me there wasn't anymore, so.
We widened it 6 feet, I think is what we could get to without getting into the private property.
Okay.
So we went.
Yeah,
pretty
so
much-
the bases right here, yeah, cut that away and all that kind of stuff,
So,
okay.
Lots of questions on when the 7-Eleven might be open. Do you guys have any updates?
if, I apologize, I didn't I was still waiting to hear back. The company that's building it turns it over to 7-Eleven, on marijuana, I mean, 420. And then,
No, you didn't tell me that day.
in Cinco de Mayo on May 5th is the grand opening, which I guess would be appropriate for a Laredo taco to be opening on Cinco de Mayo.
We approved them to put a sign up, right?
What's that?
We approved them to put a 7-Eleven sign up on that.
I gotta be the last thing that goes in. Is that public knowledge that they're gonna do a grand opening on May 5th?
It is now.
Well, I was gonna say, I was told that
I was
that's.
gonna say, Adrian probably will put it out there, because people are asking her about to know.
Yeah.
And that's,
They tentative grand opening.
that's what Paul, the job superintendent, gave me day before. What I asked him was, well, is that a soft opening on the 20th then, where they'll actually be open for business, but the grand opening's on the 5th, and he didn't have confirmation on that yet.
Oh.
So, I would say the first week, I just let him know that you expect something the first week of May.
All right, thank you.
So-
I'm curious, to hear your explanation of what it is you know about 420.
I'm not curious.
No, we'll,
Let's
we'll,
move on.
we'll pass on
Can we
that.
table that?
Good, well, of all people, you were the last one I would have expected to
To actually know that. I've got teenage and early 20s daughters.
Well, that would explain it. Okay, well, my curiosity is satisfied.
I appreciate it.
All right, anything else report for?
The Parks, Trails, and Trees Committee met last week to decide on the playground thing. We only discussed a couple other things. One of the things that we want to try to do is, we talked about doing a farmer's market last year, and then COVID kind of took the wind out of that sails. We're not gonna try to do it in the summer, but we wanted to try to host it during Harvest Daze at the farmer's market during Harvest Daze. So, yeah.
Real quick. The study session I mentioned in May for wastewater, I also want to just so you have advancements. One in June for development and recreation, and then one in July on water regulation development and a comp plan update, which is tied to that water regulation. So we need to sort that out again. So I want to do one a month for the next 3 months. That's what we're looking for. If we don't need the first meeting because of there's not enough action items, I'll do that. If not, we'll do the second meeting. Second Tuesday.
The second Tuesday,
Right,
okay.
that's right, bring you the advance notice.
And then probably having to library board and the, town board have a meeting.
Yeah, I want to do this. We haven't done that for many years, so I think we should get together.
Okay.
And it's been at least 10 years since we got together and chatted, so we should do that too.
Perfect.
Sorry.
Sorry.
I guess I won't do anything this summer.
Well, we will be doing a lot of stuff, Mike.
We approved that remote policy.
So I did, public safety, the public safety group would like to, talk about some neighborhood watch signs up in each neighborhood. So, I don't know.
We have a signed budget. We just let us know.
That would be fantastic.
Is there actually gonna be a neighborhood watch to back up the sign in each neighborhood?
So we actually have quite a few volunteers and they're split up per neighborhood. Yeah, there's gonna be at least, I'd say 4 people in each neighborhood. There's Bella Vista and Schultz are the only 2 that are missing representatives.
There you go, Mike.
No pressure.
I'll do Friday nights, sit on my porch.
Shotgun and beer can.
I'll be on the porch with beer and
Watch.
Oh my god, that's kind of Eastwood style, right? So, but yeah, there's quite a few people really very awesome. Anything else before the board? Thank you for staying for the whole meeting. Nobody does that. That's awesome.
Thank you, guys.
Yes, thank you. We stand adjourned.
Thank you for the birthday card, right?
Yes.
Wasn't for me, but